Welcome back to RX Muscle's Iron Road to the Olympia 2019, brought to you by Chemical Warfare. I'm Dave Palumbo, and today's guest is an old one to the show. He's back to analyze some of the subplots that are going to be taking place at the Mr. Olympia weekend in less than a week now. Shawn Ray, welcome back to the show.
All right, man. I told you I wasn't coming back, but I want to keep your show popular, so let's get to it.
All right, there's a lot of different subplots going on throughout this weekend. We obviously know about the absence of Shawn Rhoden. Now, I just want to get your opinion on one thing, because Shawn Rhoden has been training like a demon. We see posts on Instagram. We see the guy in great shape. He's posing. He's in the gym. I mean, this guy looks like he's ready to prepare for the Olympia, and we know he's not in the lineup, and nothing is changing. We know on August 26th he pled not guilty, and they set a court date for his trial. What do you think's going on in the Shawn Rhoden camp right now?
I'm just going to put this microphone on here. I think it's going to be better. 1 second. Hang on. Stay with me. Sorry, Dave. Can you hear me?
We hear you fine, Shawn.
Well, look, we could say the same thing about Kai Green and Phil Heath. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the focus has to be on the guys that are in the competition, not the guys that are not in the contest. Clearly, Shawn's got a lot on his plate that he's dealing with, none of which pertains to what's about to happen in the next 2 weeks. I think history is going to be made in Vegas in 2 weeks. You've got the largest prize money in the history of the sport. I think there's a lot of guys we need to be focused on and talking about, because at the end of the day, Shawn Rhoden's situation is not going to be handled in the next week. As a matter of fact, I believe his next court date isn't even set until October.
Right.
So I think we need to focus on what's coming in Vegas. And by the way, some people were trying to discount that this was not going to be a huge weekend, but now we know, based on the last maybe month or so, with the special invitation given to Cedric, with the inclusion of Hadi Choopan coming to the Olympia, there's a lot of moving parts, and we saw Brandon Curry post up a couple of videos. We can talk about Shawn Rhoden, Kai Green, Phil Heath, and all those guys. It means nothing to what's coming, Dave.
Right.
I think we need to focus on that. That's more important.
Right. All right. Well, we'll come back to that at the end, because I want to ask you about the Italy show that's going to be taking place after the Olympia. But let's talk about the biggest story right now in bodybuilding, which is Hadi Choopan somehow getting a visa. You know, a lot of people they don't know how it happened. I think it went right to the top, right to Donald Trump. I think that he felt that this was, a goodwill act,
Are you trying to give Donald Trump credit for this?
I'm giving Donald Trump credit for Hadi Choopan going into this country, because someone approved this, and Trump's got a no-fly zone for Iran. This had to go right to the top. No one is coming out and saying we got him in. So I think it was accumulation of all these different factors. The New York Post article that they ran.
I am not going to give Donald Trump the credit for this. Guy's been trying to get in our country for this was not his first shot. He has very plausible reasons for winding up in the United States, and I highly doubt that it was an issue of Donald Trump.
He might be the only Iranian. He might be the only Iranian getting into the U.S. ever. In the last 2 years at least.
There's a story that we're going to be racing for, Muscle Fitness against RX, to find out how that whole thing transpired. I highly doubt that Donald Trump's name is going to be attached to it. But that being said, we don't know whether or not Hadi's doing the 212 or he's doing the open. So let's play devil's advocate.
That was my next question. That was my next question.
Yeah, I believe on paper, he'll have an easier time fighting with Derek Lunsford than he would have with James Flex Lewis. We know that we've always known that the Mr. Olympia champion's got to be knocked out, right? I mean, literally, that's been the mantra for very, very many years.
Right.
And Hadi Choopan had a very close run-in with Flex Lewis over in Korea that arguably he beat Flex, and it didn't happen. Flex is no longer here, so we can't talk about him. Now it's Derek Lunsford, last year's first runner-up. He's probably more improved now because he's a young kid, and I'm sure each year he's getting...
let's not forget Ahmad Ashkenani as well, who looked very good in his win.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, let's be honest. I love Ahmad Ashkenani. You were there at the New York Pro. Eduardo Correa had a very strong case for winning that contest.
Oh, absolutely. But that wasn't the best Ashkenani that we had seen.
But I don't give Eduardo Correa the same amount of weight when it goes up against Hadi. I think Hadi would tear Eduardo Correa apart. And so, therefore, I think he's probably going to have a field day with Ashkenani. This contest, if he's in the 212, would be directly between him and Derek Lunsford, I believe. Should he go that route? I believe he wins on size and muscle maturity because he's much more muscular than Derek. Derek's a prettier physique, but we know that these big freaky physiques, they make the pretty physiques look small. Arguably that's why Labrada couldn't beat Lee Haney and I couldn't beat Dorian Yates. And I think you throw Hadi into that open category, I think everybody in that top 6 is going to have to be concerned because arguably he could probably win that contest.
Easily. Now, in Iran, we know that in the Middle East, bodybuilding is like on par with what I guess NFL football or Major League Baseball would be here in the United States. You're a superstar there. You know, you're important. The government usually gives you funding, the housing, and stuff like that. Winning the 212 Olympia, saying I'm Mr. Olympia, I would imagine would have to be something that would be beneficial to Hadi Choopan when he goes back to Iran, wouldn't you say?
Hadi is already the prince of Iran. Let's not fool ourselves. Before him, it was Bato Abaspor, God rest his soul.
Right.
But Hadi just getting in the Olympia is going to come home a king. Before he was the prince of Iran, now he's going to be the king of Iran when it comes down to this sport, whether he wins or he loses. Just the fact that he's actually in the show, that entire country is going to wake up and take notice. They're going to be watching the webcast put on by Digital Muscle, I'm sure. But Hadi, I believe, going into this contest, has a little bit more weight on his shoulders. The concern isn't that he represents Iran very well. I think the concern is whether or not he can peak. This is the contest notorious for some of these athletes that is bigger than the economy of just showing up and being good. Cedric McMillan has been notoriously a failure at the Olympia. But he's won mini shows and he's shown flashes of brilliance, but on the Olympia stage, it never happened. Flex Wheeler's got 3 first runner-ups at this contest, but he was a promise never kept. He never looked as good on the Olympia day as he did when he won those 4 Honor Classic championships over in Ohio. And I think it's because the moment, the event sometimes is so big and so overwhelming that some of these bodybuilders can self-implode. Now, let's be mindful that Hadi's never competed in the U.S. Before. It's a very long trip from Iran to come here and compete, whereas it was much easier for him to get to Korea or over to Italy. Right,
but he is here already, Shawn. He'll be here 2 weeks before.
I get the fact that he's here. Yeah. I get the fact that he's here and he's here early, but still, you've got to really suck it up and dial it in. And with the help of Hani Rambod, that might not be a problem, but it could very well be that the moment's a little bit beyond his reach. And if he doesn't show up peeled, Dave, he's not the guy that's going to upset a bunch of these guys that are consistently consistent. Dexter was 7th place a year ago. He's sniffing an opportunity. He may be the very best Dexter we've ever seen for him, but even the very best that Dexter has to bring, I think, it's not going to be that youthful 10 or 11-year-old physique that we saw in 2008. I mean, Father Times has a way of kind of changing the way that we see things. And again, Brandon Curry's still very youthful. I know that Roelly Winklaar missed an opportunity in Ohio.
But Shawn, do you think that Hadi Choopan is going to do the Open? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, we just covered the 212 possibilities. If he's in the 212, I believe he wins on freaky in size and muscle maturity, whether he's ripped or not. He's just too big for Derek Lunsford. He goes into the Open category. He's a guy that should be walking into the top 6, but if the moment's too big for him, he can get beat by William Bonac. He can get beat by Brandon Curry. But if he dials it in and he comes in crispy, nice and ripped and peeled, even with the ugliest physique, he could be a top 3 bodybuilder. Because he doesn't have the best shape. He doesn't have the best symmetry. Dexter will beat him in shape and looks. But I think Hadi will beat him in the graininess. And that's what made Dorian Yates Mr. Olympia so many times.
Well, if you were Hadi Choopan, what category would you pick? Would you do Open or would you do 212?
Well, Hadi Choopan, like James Flex Lewis, struggles to get to that 212. He gives up a lot of muscle. And traveling all the way from Iran, it's hard to suck down to make weight. Even though he's got 2 weeks late, he probably at this moment would be suffering to make that 212 division. Conversely, if he's going to go on the Open, he's not really looking at the scale anymore. I mean, I never looked at the scale. We didn't have a reason to. But if he's not looking at the scale, Hadi Choopan's doing bodybuilding 101. I mean, he's eat, sleeping, and training. And Hadi, having worked with Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler and Phil Heath and Jeremy Bundia, he knows what to do the last 2 weeks to help this guy get to where he needs to be. And he's not playing roulette a la Chad Nichols. I mean, Hadi's life is not on the line here. So he can dial it in and come in over 212 and look very healthy. And if he does, we know that he gave Cedric McMillan a scare. We know that he beat Brandon Curry. We know he beat Nathan Diasha. This is the top 6 guy on paper. But if he's in that Open category, I got to say he's fighting for the top 4.
Yeah, I mean, is that enough though? I mean, would it be better to win the Olympia in 212 and then maybe next year come back and do the Open? Or is it like, let's throw all my cards in and let's see where I fall in that Open? I don't see him winning the Open. I don't see him even placing top 3 at the Open because like you pointed out, alone he looks incredible. Next to 212 guys, he dwarfs them because he's so big. But I think he's going to have a lot of trouble against those top 3 or 4 guys because they're going to just show his structural weaknesses.
I think if he comes in shape, he's top 4. It's better to walk around saying I'm top 4 in the world than saying I'm the king of the 212 against a bunch of guys you were supposed to beat that we all on paper know he probably can beat. He doesn't have to win the Mr. Olympia his first time out to be considered a failure. I mean, most guys don't win the Olympia their first time out. As a matter of fact, let me see. Who did win the Olympia their first time? Lee Haney didn't. Dorian Yates didn't. Phil Heath didn't. So he can go in this contest and place 5th place, and that's success. And not for nothing. They didn't have the 212 when I was around, and I was in the top 5. It opened a whole lot of doors for me. Had the 212 been there, I would have been battling it out with I don't know, after Labrada retired in 1994.
Lee Priest.
From 94 all the way up, I wouldn't have been challenged because there was nobody that was 212. It was just me.
Yeah, you and Lee Priest.
So who am I beating? I mean, who am I better than? I don't know. I think for Hadi, if you have a chance to go Open, I think you jump in. You want to be one of the best in the world, go up against the best in the world. You want to be the king of the little guys. It served James Flex Lewis well, but I think it's a novelty act.
Do you think that he had been training for the Olympia? Like I've heard word that his weight is heavier than it usually is because he wasn't really convinced he was going to be in this show. I think he was more aiming towards the post-Olympia shows.
Yeah. So I think that from the very start, he had his eyes set for the Olympia. If that door opened, he would be ready. And I've always said that opportunity and preparation it puts you in a very good spot for success. You have to be prepared so that if the Olympia doesn't come, he can back off a little bit and go on to whatever's next on that lineup. Only show that I knew of was Romania in November. You're saying there's one coming up in Italy now.
There's the John Enrico Pica show, yeah.
Is that in December or October?
No, I think it's October. I think it's right after the Olympia. I think it's like a week or two after the Olympia.
I can tell you that Hani and Hadi have always probably had their eyes set for this year's Mr. Olympia, and I can't imagine this guy was like backing up, being afraid that it wouldn't happen. I believe he's a very positive guy, thinking that if this happens, I have to be prepared. What do I have to lose? He's a guy that didn't stop training, whereas Phil Heath and Kai Green, they did. Yeah. And sorry about that, Dave. Yeah. They stopped training, and when they did stop training, they probably didn't have enough time to ramp it back up. Hadi Choopan's the real deal. I'm telling you right now, if he goes Open, he may be top 4. If he goes into 212, he's the new 212 champion.
Yeah. What would you rather be?
I personally would rather be the top 5 in the world, only because that's what I was, and it served my career very well. And he has nowhere to go. I mean, there's no expectation in terms of if he gets fit. I mean, it's his first Olympia.
Right. Let me ask you this question. I know this is a tough one because it's really putting you on the spot, but structurally, can Hadi Choopan be Mr. Olympia ever?
Structurally, he's going to struggle against Brandon Curry. Structurally, he'll really have to. There's a lot of things you got to consider with him next to Roelly Winklaar, who could actually make him look small.
Right.
I mean, his battle is going to be William Bonac, and William Bonac was 4th place a year ago. He's been 2nd, and he's been 3rd. He's going to have to beat William Bonac. He is for Hadi Choopan. William Bonac is Miley Labrada of the early '90s.
Yeah.
Right. Labrada was a little lighter on the musculature side, but he was so pretty. Right, he was put together, and his performance was so strong. And I was youthful; I was a lot younger, so I had to come into my maturity before I actually surpassed him by 1993. Hadi Choopan doesn't have the prettiest physique, but we also know that you don't have to be pretty in the Open. Jay Cutler had a very boxy-looking physique. Arguably, Ronnie Coleman towards the tail end, his last couple of Olympias, it wasn't the pretty Ronnie Coleman we saw in '98 and at the Arnold Classic in 2001. I think Hadi will be fighting against William Bonac. That's his yardstick. If he beats William Bonac, he's potentially in 3rd or 4th place.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. When I had Jay Cutler on the show last week, he pointed out the fact that on paper and in his mind, Roelly Winklaar is the next in line to win the Olympia. Would you agree with that statement? And do you think that Roelly has enough firepower if he comes in shape to take the title this year?
I would not rule Roelly Winklaar out. 5 years ago, I would say, hell no, he could never really get it together at the Olympia. But last year, he showed flashes of brilliance. He was third place, and he cleaned the clock of a lot of very good bodybuilders, including Big Ramy and Dexter Jackson. He showed that he's the real deal. And with the knee injury in Ohio, that explained why he wasn't prepared for Ohio, because it was an actual knee injury. I was with him in Kuwait in the month of July, and he looked every bit as good as he could be for that time period. Roelly Winklaar realized this is a small window. He's been a pro now for 11 years. It's a small window. That window is now. So if he doesn't show up ready to go this year, it's doubtful that it will ever happen for him, because he's never going to have this kind of an opportunity ever again. And if he wins it, who's going to complain? He's beaten everybody there before.
Right. And he's got look, we love Mr. Olympias with a ton of muscle on him, right? I mean, that's what the fans like to see, freaky muscle, but we want to see him in shape. Can Roelly Winklaar peak for the Olympia? A lot of people say we've never seen him in the best shape. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think the closest we got was last year when he got third. That was rightfully earned. I think the fans even gave him the fan favorite award. Yeah. We were cheering for Roelly because he finally nailed his peak, and then he injured his knee. So he says he's not injured now. Brandon's not in. Everybody seems to be like ready to go. That's why when the naysayers are saying this is not going to be an Olympia that's going to be very interesting, things just got very interesting in the last couple of weeks. And I was with Cedric in Chile just about a month ago, and he swears that he has nothing else but eat, sleeping, and training on his plate. And if Cedric can pull it together in the Olympia the way that he does in Ohio, right, he's another guy that we cannot discount that would be fighting it out for the top five. So I'm really excited for this one.
Cedric is one of the, it's like a horse. If you had to like handicap a horse race, Cedric would be like that 40-1 guy, you know, the odds. But you know you can throw your money on him because he might actually come through and actually could win the show. But more than likely he won't, because he has trouble peaking in Vegas. And I don't know if it's a head thing or if it's just the end of the year and he's just not there. But all these guys, like in '98, Shawn, know there's a vacant title here and that someone's going to win that Olympia. And it's not going to be a former Mr. Olympia, unless it's Dexter Jackson, of course. But
and listen, the '98 Olympia is folklore, man. I mean, that was one of, you look at that top six lineup in the Olympia, I mean, it was ridiculous. We were all ready for that show. So This is another one of those weekends that I think we're going to be taking a long, hard look at the top five guys, and it's going to be decided when the fat lady sings. You know, it's not going to be decided after prejudging. Right.
I think that Cedric really is the wild card here, because he has beaten everyone in the lineup, and he has the structure to be Mr. Olympia. The question is, will he deliver? I mean, can you see a scenario where, you know, because we know, Shawn, that on paper, we'd like everyone to be in the best possible shape, but that's not going to happen. More than likely, half the guys we've mentioned won't be in the best shape, and we'll push them out of the running. And you know, if Cedric and Dexter Jackson wind up as the only guys in shape, you could see a final call out Dexter versus Cedric up there.
I can tell you, I am one of Cedric's biggest fans, and if out of that lineup, besides Brandon Curry, I would like nothing more than to see Cedric McMillan walk off with that title. With the contributions he's made to the sport, with his charisma, his personality, being a military guy, and considering I was there when he won the Nationals, and I've already vouched for him as being the next Mr. Olympia, and that was some 11 years ago. And same with Lee Haney. If he can bring it all together, he's head and shoulders above the rest. He's the modern day Lee Haney in this lineup. Yeah. And Lee Haney was head and shoulders above everyone. 1983, Lee Haney was third, behind Muhammad McAway at 5'3", and behind Samir Banu at 5'6". Yeah. But once he hit his stride the following year, he hung on for 8 years. Cedric McMillan may pull a Lee Haney in potentially the last year of his competition. If I'm Cedric and I can pull it together and win this Mr. Olympia, I'm going to do the retirement tour of guest postings in 2020 and call it a day.
Yeah, I doubt that'll happen. But you're right. He is at the end of his career. But Shawn Rhoden proved that doesn't mean anything, because Shawn Rhoden won the Olympia at 43 years of age. So Cedric obviously is a youthful, I don't even know how old he is, to be honest with you. He's obviously in his 40s.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is,
there's nowhere for Cedric to go if he wins the Olympia but down. So why not go out on top? And I think this is what he may have in his mind. I'm going to win that Sandow Trophy, and then I'm going to go be the best representative I can be. And you wouldn't have a better guy qualified for that spot than Cedric McMillan. So again, I feel like I'm a fan all over again, Dave, because of the unknowns. We don't know what the hell is going to happen. and I don't want to hear about it online. Like, I want to be there. So that's why I'm excited when people say this is going to be one of those Olympias. No, it's not. I mean, it's not 1981 where guys sat it out and boycotted and Franco Palumbo won that. This is a contest that's wide open for our very best in the world. And if you want to hear about it from a third party, stay home. If you want to see it, get your tickets online at MrOlympia.com or watch it at digitalmuscle.com. Either way, this is going to be an Olympia that we're all going to be talking about, no matter who the winner is, because they could all win. I mean, there's 5-6 guys that can win the show.
All right, let's throw. I want to throw one final thing out there. William Bonac had this explosive Instagram story we all know about, where he basically told everyone how he fired Neil Hill and Neil was taking 40% of his prize money, and he went nuts basically, which I actually think William uses as motivation to be a better bodybuilder. He almost like needs some kind of like dramatic, like almost like Kai Green, like some dramatic like incident to like push him a little harder. Will that hurt him in the judges' eyes, do you think, if it's close at the end?
The judges know most bodybuilders are fragile. They are one chicken breast away from losing it. You saw William at the press conference last year with Cedric McMillan.
Yeah.
We've seen him wear his heart on his sleeve. He's probably one of the more passionate and aggressive. I wouldn't want to mess with William Bonac, okay?
Yeah.
Because when you get down to the nitty gritty, I mean, this guy is a ticking time bomb. Thank God he has bodybuilding to take it out on the weights.
Right.
You're not going to find a more passionate guy who's dedicated the better part of his life to this occasion. And I believe he's going to rise to the occasion. I believe that whether or not he wins or loses is not the most important thing. He needs validation. He's an Arnold Classic champion. People are writing him off because he no longer has his sidekick in Neil Hill. He may be better because he doesn't have Neil Hill. So that's why we can't write the kid off. His mouth is not like mine. Mine might have cost me an Olympia or two. But I think there's a better understanding of these athletes being emotionally fragile, that with this Instagram and Insta-famous age that we live in, seeing one of these guys melt down is almost commonplace. I remember, who's the guy that was in with The Rock and Fast and the Furious, the black dude? The black guy, the bald head, black singer. Yeah. He had a meltdown on Instagram that was like ridiculous. It went to TMZ. You see some of the most secure, stable, successful people having meltdowns now on Instagram. William's just one of the latest. But at the end of the day, we're judging a physique. This is a physique contest, not a personality contest. He comes with some flaws, but he will be ready for that competition. That's why I'm like, I want to get to Vegas. I can't wait.
But you know what? Notoriously, Mr. Olympia has always been a very well-spoken, very, a good person, good guy. You know what I mean? It always seems to work out that way. Aside from this craziness that happened with Shawn Rhoden that took everyone by surprise, I mean, by and far, the Mr. Olympia, champions have been solid individuals, very stable in that sense.
And very predictable.
Yeah.
And very predictable and listen, how many repeat Mr. Olympia champions can we have? That's another reason why in retirement I'm a little bit more excited about this show, because I'm not going to watch a movie that we know the outcome.
Yeah.
For so many years we were all having to pay this extraordinary cost to go and witness something that we already knew the outcome. It was probably a foregone conclusion. I remember Kevin Levrone in 2001's like, I've won every contest there is to win, but we know I'm not going to win the Mr. Olympia. And I can say that with a straight face, and you guys know it too. So that's where the downfall of being a part of the Olympia weekend is. We no longer have that. There's expectation from 5 or 6 guys to rise to the top. And we also have a bunch of new guys. Max Charles, Steve Kuklo, William Diasha. These guys they want to find their place too. And that's a whole nother contest taking place on the other side of the top 5. And who's going to be the odd man out? Like, who's going to be the one that's not making that top 6?
Who's going to be the 6th guy who wasn't in the top 6 last year in your mind?
If you're a bodybuilding pundit, that's very important to the economy of doing the business of bodybuilding. What these guys ask for guest posing appearances and supplemental contracts in their own business, it's very important where they place in terms of the top 6 or 7 through 10. And so there's a whole nother storyline taking place about who's going to be there and who's going to get left out of that top 10. Right? I don't really care about the guys that aren't there. Josh Shanarkowitz is not there. Phil Heath and Shawn Rhoden, Kai Green. Those are non-stories. We got to talk about the people.
Who's going to take the place of the missing person? Are we going to see a Juan Morel? Are we going to see a Nakeem Williams in there? Who do you think is going to be that guy, Michael Lockett, who moves into that spot?
Yeah. Let me tell you, man. Michael Lockett doesn't have the prettiest physique, but he's racked up a slew of championships from Chicago to Vancouver. And these guys are going, what in the hell happened, right? Juan Morel has won a couple of New York pros, but he hasn't really arrived at the Olympia weekend. And now would be a great opportunity for him to arrive.
Right.
So there's some challenges in front of some of these guys that we call new jacks. They're just not as experienced. But that's going to play out right in front of our eyes, Dave. I can't tell you who's going to do what. I can't even tell you with a straight face who's going to be the Mr. Olympia. And you know what? It feels freaking really good to not know the answer to that freaking question, because for so many years, I was like along for the freaking Dorian Yates party and the Lee Haney party and the Ronnie Coleman party. It was so predictable. And how refreshing is it to not know the outcome of this story?
No, I think that makes it a very exciting weekend. Before we let you go, classic physique. Breon Ansley going for, the third title. We have obviously Bumstead in there. George Peterson, who won the Arnold Classic. Who do you think you think Ansley will hold on for another year?
Yeah, this is one where it's like Breon and everyone else. Chris Cormier and him have been up in Arizona training frantically for the last couple of weeks, putting in the last bit of details, getting a lot of quality sun. And I've seen some posts go up where I'm just looking at this guy going like, that's what classic physique is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why he's won it the last 2 years. So, there were some of those contests in the Mr. Olympia Open where we could argue and we can debate. But I think when they created the classic physique division, this is who and what they had in mind. And this is his contest to lose. But so far, what I've seen at this point, it's going to take a genetic freak to come out and knock out Breon, because Breon was made for this.
Yeah, well, also when you're the reigning champ, you really have to screw up to kind of get knocked off your pedestal,
Well, you do, but I think this is what they had in mind when they said classic physique. So hats off to Breon for at least living up to the hype, right? He wasn't challenged in his last 2 times, and I don't know that there's somebody new coming in to challenge. There's some taller guys and different looking physiques, but when you look at it as sum total, Breon is classic physique Olympia all day long.
Yeah. Now, I understand that you're going to be running the press conference with Bob Ciccarello. We're not going to see Dennis James this year. Is that true?
Yeah, but that's not a major revelation. Listen, people come to the press conference to see the athletes. Me and Bob are both equally skilled in terms of where these athletes have come from. It's not my first time hosting something like this. I do know that there's a lot of other side stories that are going to be taking place along with the Wings of Strength Legends and Champions reunion of the Ms. Olympia winners and the women's Wings of Strength champions. They're taking the top 5 from the Phoenix Rising this weekend, and they're going to all do their posing on the Expo stage on, I believe, Friday. And they're going to pick the best poser from there. That's just one side responsibility.
Right, but my question is, what's going to happen at how are they running the press conference? Since you're going to be involved in it, I want to just know what the structure of it is.
Yeah, listen, I haven't missed the press conference since I was first in it in 1988. They're all pretty much the same. We're going to ask a few questions of some of the players. We're going to reveal some things that are going to be coming up on Friday and on Saturday for the fans. We're going to give the audience an opportunity to ask some of the questions. This is a place where, Dave, these athletes don't have nothing to say. It's like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
They just want to kind of get through it. I think the main thing we're going to do is make sure that no one has their phones on the stage. We want them present. We want them coherent. And we want to make sure that the fans have a chance to at least address them. But more importantly, we want to make sure that everybody knows what's at stake here. It's the largest prize money in the history of the sport across the board. No one... In the 55 years that they've had this, every single category got a pay raise. So that's a pretty big thing. These guys want to be respected as professionals. AMI and company are now making sure that they're getting compensated as such. But there's a lot of other things going on. You got Mark Wahlberg and Mario Lopez coming to the Olympia. Those are, mainstream people. And, of course, I'm sure there's probably going to be more than one announcement. Don't be surprised, Dave, if we don't hear somebody retiring on that stage. I was there when I believe Dennis James made his retirement speech, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't hear 1 or 2 of those from some of the athletes that have been on that stage before, even from the women's side.
Interesting. All right, well, Shawn, thanks for the update. Thanks for the opinions, of course. Good luck at the Olympia. I know you're going to be representing AMI over there. You'll be running that press conference. And what will Jake Cutler's capacity be over there as the he's the ambassador of the Olympia?
You remember, like, the '94 Olympics when Muhammad Ali was running with the torch.
Yeah,
right?
is that Jay?
Yeah, that's Jay. Jay is, and he's earned that right. He's an ambassador. He lives in Las Vegas. He's going to open the whole thing up and kick it off. And you got to be mindful that with the inclusion of the Mr. Olympia and the fitness and all those other events that we have going on, we also have an opportunity for these guys to meet the Olympians Thursday night. We have the Amateur Olympia starting Wednesday night with the women's. Continues on Thursday with the men's. Mm-hmm. There's all kind of CrossFit stuff going on over at the Expo. So for those people that have never been there, the press conference is free, and it starts at 12 o'clock on Thursday at the arena where the actual contest takes place.
Right.
Remember, on Friday, the 212 prejudging takes place in the Expo Hall, and the finals takes place on the main stage in the arena where the press conference is being held. So there's a schedule out there. You want to take a look at it. It actually everything starts Wednesday. And, of course, it finalizes on Sunday with the Olympians seminar, which is $25 at the Orleans Hotel. A lot of people miss that, but that's a good place to hear from the champions themselves of what they just experienced. That takes place at the Orleans on Sunday.
Right.
So it's going to be a busy weekend, Dave. Of course, I'll be on the ground on Wednesday. I'll run into you guys out there. And all these questions are going to be answered on Saturday night,
That's
which,
right.
of course, when it's going to be all said and done. And I'm really curious to see how this whole thing plays out.
Yeah, it's a great, I think it's one of the more, people keep foo-fooing every time I say it's one of the more exciting Olympias, but I really think it is, because you're right, we don't know who's going to win, and we're going to have a lot of new crown champions, and that makes for excitement. Change is scary, but it's also good because it mixes things up, and we can see a whole new look for the sport, and something that
with me, I'm co-hosting this press conference with Bob. I mean, I'm window dressing. I'm a side piece to this whole thing. It's not a change. Dennis James did a great job for many years. I actually work with Muscle and Fitness and AMI, so it's a natural fit that I'm going to be up there kind of co-hosting that with Bob. But I mean, we're going to be bringing that to you on digitalmuscle.com for those of you that don't make it to the Olympia competition. It'll be webcast live at digitalmuscle.com.
Oh, that's a good idea. So now people can watch the press conference. Great.
I don't know if the press conference is webcast.
They should. They might as well, right? Why not?
Well, I mean, it may be. I just don't know that it's going to be done by Digital Muscle. I do know on Friday and Saturday you won't miss a beat.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be a million cell phones live casting on Facebook
Live,
and Instagram.
Instagram Live, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the one thing you won't see is the athletes on that stage. They won't have their phones, which I think is good for the fans.
Yeah, no, I think it's terrible. I think when people have phones up there, it's very distracting. So.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I'll see you guys there.
All right, Shawn, thanks so much. And guys, that's going to take us to the end of another episode of RX Muscle's Iron Road to the Olympia 2019, brought to you by Chemical Warfare. I'm Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next time.
All right, brother. I'm out.